me get my PowerPoint.
That's all I have. Who's your contact? Please, maybe help me. Oh, Caitlin does mom. That's not me, mom.
Okay.
I'm taking mom.
Okay, I need that. All right, moving on. Now your teachers. Okay, your students, you did a beautiful job. We debriefed it, we talked about patterns, we talked about the different ways to explain things. We talked about you learning from their explanation, them learning from you, from your explanation. So now, as a teacher, what were we doing? As a learner, were you engaged in this activity?
Yes.
Some of you were not quite as engaged because we have done parts of this before. So this was kind of a catch-up for the new people, and the old people kind of knew where I was heading with this. Y'all did a great job of being quiet about it though, okay? So were you engaged?
Yes.
Yes. How do you know you were engaged? All of that conversation. Why do you think I walked around the whole time? Make sure your conversations were on bit, and to make sure that you were headed the right direction. So if I heard some words that I thought, well, that's not quite right, I need to stop and see what they're talking about. Many times I would stop and say, show me something. And then y'all would kind of kick into the right lane, okay? All right, so if an outsider, such as an evaluator, had walked in, what would they see, what would they hear, what would they think? You know your principles, they're gone now, you can be open. Jen?
Ours was not here, but he would see it as chaotic, and I would probably be aggressive. Because I talk loud, right, but he would also probably stick around longer than a few minutes that you intended, and then actually go ask the kids, and if the kids can come up with the right answer, then we're doing good. If not, then it's kind of a, hey, Pattison, let's have a meeting.
Other principals, what do you think they would say? What do you hope they would say? Notice. Eyes were engaged.
High student
Engagement.
participation.
Okay.
Higher field strategies.
Good. Those thinking strategies going on. Denise?
The teacher is engaged, not sitting down.
Teacher is out monitoring, not sitting down.
Teacher is not the giver of all the information and discussion and responses.
Good. So the teacher does not, I don't tell anybody anything usually. Sometimes I do. Brenda and I had a discussion about order of operations. She said, what concrete can I use for order of operations? Do you have one?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was going to say the kids are discovering.
Yes, the kids are discovering. I have no concrete thing for order of operations. Tim, do you? There are just some concepts, not very many,
I
but
don't have a
some.
manipulative.
That's
But
very
not-
abstract. The
yeah.
order of operations was created by a group of people who said, I got this answer and you got this answer, we got to figure it out so we both get the same answer. And so they decided on the order of operations. There's nothing magic about it, that's just how they decided they wanted it. And it does seem to work very nicely. Okay? All right, so some things just don't have concrete. And I'm going to be honest about that. So where was I before I got off on my order of operations?
The principal.
So principal, so thank you. So what else would you consider, who's, you know what I'm trying to say, because I don't. If your principal had walked in while we were doing this and y'all were children, would they be pleased? Would they want an explanation? They would be pleased. They would be pleased. Ashley?
I have a question. My principal would be pleased, but he wants to help. You tell him to get out,
Tell him my rule.
and he'll start, just an example, earlier in the year, he came in the middle of the lesson, we were talking about how angle of the tilt of the earth is what causes the seasons, and one of the stages in the middle of this investigation, so what would happen if the North Pole was only facing the sun? And so he came in and they said, well, you know, it's sunlight all the time on the North Pole because it's facing the sun. And then talked about the tilt of the earth is the cause of the seasons. And I got an email, he said, well, they think the sun shines on the North Pole all the time. And especially my bilingual students were in there and they were confused because he told them no, that And then he told him, no, it's not the tilt to the earth that causes disease.
And very politely say, hush.
Get out, you tell him, get out.
Wow. Say, and tell him my rule, you know, he can ask questions, but he can't tell them
Just
anything.
call Dr. West, she'll take care of it.
Oh, yeah.
She absolutely will come, she'll come here before, she'll come.
Are you, you're divine, aren't you? Aren't you divine? Are you from divine?
No, she has Mr. Never.
Okay.
But may
Oh,
I-
you're Lockhart?
I'm going to give a plug for this. Very few programs won't invite and bring principals and teachers together because we're all learners then. And we come with our own paradigms. And for someone who always said your class looks chaotic, you know, because it was a new principal. And a lot of times you have to be your best advocate by knowing how to explain it. I mean, let's pretend I was an English major and you were a science major, I mean, right there. So that bringing the principal here and participating, we found in all of our PD, it was like, wow. It just puts everyone with the same conversation.
That's exactly what the principals go through.
That's-
They have 3 days of training. That's exactly what that's what they talk about. That's exactly what Denise goes over with them in their 3 days of training. What should you look for in a math class and a science class? It's not going to look like a spelling class. Okay, it's going to be, may seem chaotic, but the kids are engaged.
About once a month, I remind my students that if anybody walks in, it doesn't matter if it's a principal or, you know, somebody visiting, you need to know what to say when they come in here. So if you're talking about other things.
Teach them to say, I love my teacher.
Talk about what you're doing and, you know, tell them what you're working on, explain what you're doing, because that's why they want to ask questions. You tell them what you're doing exactly.
Wonderful. Okay, we better move on because I got to get on the road. So, one more time, because this is my soapbox, you got to start with the concrete when possible, which is almost all the time. Go through that pictorial. Did we do that? Absolutely. And then do the abstract. Did we do that? Absolutely. How? Where was the abstract? The function and then the explanation. That verbal description is so important. They've got to be able to verbally tell you where those numbers in that function came from, in the picture or in the table or both. Because if they can just, some of y'all are really good in math. You saw the function like that. When I was at your table and said, okay, where's the 3 in the picture? You know what you did? I don't know. You didn't say, I don't know, but you looked at me like I was crazy. Okay? So the kids, they have to relate all of those representations, multiple representations, all right? I get a little preachy about that. And so here are those representations again. I told you I changed those all to uppercase too. I just didn't do it on these. Okay, so we just answered that before the principals left, because I wanted them to hear it. He's already printed off. Okay, so back to mathematical habits of mind. Did we do any doing and undoing? Of course we did. Did we build rules to make it to represent functions? Yes, we did. Did we do any abstracting? Where's the abstract part? The explanation and the function, right? So the geometric, because this was a geometric activity because we used the shapes, right? Okay. Did we do any reasoning with relationships? When?
Well, we got into a little discussion about adding another shape to the table, what it does to the actual pattern.
Right.
How it's
Number
represented.
5, yes.
Right.
What else?
The perimeter.
The perimeter. What else? Clinton asked a great question, and then we got to talk about parallel.
Right. Which part of the shape is represented by?
Parallel. Yeah. So we did reason about relationships. Did we investigate invariance? Things that don't change. That 2 doesn't change, does it? Mom and Pop are always there. Okay, it is linear. Did we generalize anything? Anytime you write your own function, you're generalizing. You are generalizing. And then we're trying to balance exploration with reflection. Because I do this in the afternoon and y'all have to plan lessons. I don't have as much time as the science people do, so that may get cut short from time to time, but I try not to let it get cut short. The reflection for, okay? So, I'm gonna skip that because we're running late. So, if you gave this activity to your students, what is your role as the teacher?
Facilitator.
Okay, facilitate, not answer questions. What's the role of the students? Investigate, come up with the answers. You may have to scaffold a few, more than you do others. Okay? And so, let me see what's next. All right. This is important, and I don't know if we'll have time to do it, but at your tables, I wanted you to write 2 or 3 questions that could encourage your students to develop one or more of these habits of mind. Okay? So I'll give you, I have to be on the road at 2:45. So I'll give you 3 minutes to discuss at your table. Choose one of these habits of mind, just one. And then pick up the activity we just did. Come up with 1 or 2 questions that could encourage the development of one of these habits of mind at your table.
Yes, ma'am.
Ask the
What would happen if there this one, one of them has colored house and one of them has probably
So we don't have a food spectrum. They've got
Any copies of it?
take these things. We're in this table. What's the relationship between obviously like while they're in this relationship between the table has number of table count.
They're still nasty. It's been in my garage. I think that's happening.
That was the first one. They really struggled. So I would give her toothpicks and say how many toothpicks you need. That was the first one. It was that. So like the interaction because it was just easier. It didn't have, and now it was just complicated. It didn't just adding and they should be able to discuss everything.